Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. On this channel, we discuss day-to-day problems people face in their lives. Let's start with the video. I have a very large family, 8 siblings. On my mom's side, she's the oldest of 8, so that means my grandparents on my mom's side have a lot of grandchildren, 40 to be exact. They already aren't well off, so the likelihood of them leaving anything is very unlikely. On my dad's side, however, my siblings and I are the only grandkids. My grandparents on that side have never had an issue with money. But my dad passed when I was young, and my mom and grandma had a falling out. So when my grandpa and grandma passed, it was very clear in the will that my mom had no legal control over how the money was split up. The one who was put in charge of the trust was the 2 oldest in our family, my older sister. She's been married for 5 years, taken financial classes, and is very good with legal part of how to fairly divide the inheritance. All split up, each kid would get about $70K. But there are conditions. The money cannot be accessed if you have issues with drugs or addictions and want to spend it on unnecessary luxury items. It also can be accessed until you're 35. There are a few others, but you get the gist. The only exceptions to this rule are if you buy a house or invest to make a profit. My other older sister, the 3 of the children, already used this to her advantage after she got married and bought a house with her husband. Recently, our oldest brother got engaged after dating and looking for years. His fiancée is somewhat well off and was already looking for a house to buy before they met. After they met and got engaged, they both decided to hold off on her buying a house while they could find and buy a house together. They found a house that they liked and want to flip and remodel. It's dirt cheap, but it isn't in a livable condition and has a mold problem. This means the bank won't give them the loan. So he talked with my oldest sister, the beneficiary of the will, and went to see if they could take all of the inheritance money for this house. My sister agreed, but they didn't want to screw over my younger siblings, the youngest of which is 10. The rules are they have a certain amount of time to pay the inheritance money back with a small interest rate, and if they don't, the trust will take the house. I don't know a lot about how it all works, and I could completely be confused here, but I do know that my brother isn't good with money and has a tendency to jump from hobby to hobby, project to project. Maybe he snapped out of it after getting engaged, but I don't want my siblings and I to be disadvantaged because of him. I can't tell if I'm being mean or not, or if it's just my own greed. Will I be the a-hole if I told him I don't think he should risk screwing over my siblings and I, even though he wanted to be married and buy a house for some time now? I believe this is a violation of the trustee's fiduciary duty. Get legal advice. She might need to be removed and an impartial trustee installed. Find proper legal advice in your area. Usually, an executor of an estate has a mandate to ensure sufficient liquidity for all distributions and would not be allowed to take risky investments. They may become personally liable to return the funds if the investment fails. Even a low interest rate could be a violation of fiduciary duties on the sister's part. If the interest rate is lower than other safe investments, her job is to safeguard the interests of the beneficiaries, not to indulge her brother in his desire to invest somebody else's money. Nope, totally not the a-hole. He was left with $70K. He's entitled to $70K. He's an adult, capable, hypothetically, of making rational decisions, and he can't afford a house. He shouldn't buy a house. Trusting someone with a history of poor money management with hundreds of thousands of dollars that does not belong to him seems like a recipe for disaster. I love my siblings. I have 3 of them. I'd always help them out if they were in a tough spot, but I'd never give them 70 grand, not without absolute 100% certainty that I'd get it back. It's a lot of money to throw away if things go wrong. I feel like I would have been okay with it if we had a family meeting before, but because he went to my sister in private, it feels like he knew we wouldn't want that. Also, legally, my sister can give him the money as she sees fit. She's the only one who has control of it, not the a-hole. I don't understand why he would get all of it and not his portion, which you said would be about $70K. This is completely fair, and you could get a lawyer to stop your sister if your reasoning isn't enough. She has no right to loan him money for an extremely risky investment. If he doesn't finish the house, it will still have costs like taxes and legal upkeep while being worth very little. If he does finish the house, he may not be able to sell it. It's possible he could then get a regular mortgage out on it, but he'd only be able to take 80% of the equity the bank calculates the house at. Say that the bank says the house is worth 150K. You'd only get 120K, which is 10K less for each of you and younger siblings. You really need to talk to your sister and, if need be, a lawyer. People will be mad at you if you go the lawyer route, but you are protecting yourself and scumbling. 70K inheritance combined with girlfriend with savings is enough to buy a livable house if they have jobs and good credit to get a mortgage, but that's not your problem. For your information, it's also not right to risk all of your inheritance for interest in a loan. You should get a perfect age of house equal to your investment. That said, don't go this route and stop, sister. It's too risky. Not the a-hole. Your older sister could find herself in a lot of trouble if she invests the funds in your brother's project and it loses money. Part of her responsibility is to be prudent with the money. This investment is far too risky, especially when you factor in your brother being bad with money and not inclined to stick to a project. Tell your older sister that you do not agree to this. Not the a-hole, and your sister may be good with finance but a poor judge of character. Protect your siblings by calling a meeting of everyone. It isn't just your brother who is about to screw over the siblings. Your sister is participating in that, and this is going to end so badly. Next story. My wife is in her first and last pregnancy. She's in her early 20s, but has had holes in her uterus in the past and miscarried previously. This one is super high risk, and the doctor's visits have been frequent and stressful. After this, my wife will be getting sterilized and I'll be getting a vasectomy. She's currently 7 months pregnant, and all she's been craving is plain grilled ground beef soaked in garlic powder, red crushed pepper, and sriracha and peanut caramel marzipan. As the person who has to smell it and kiss her, I prefer to spoil her with the marzipan as it's much quicker for her to be able to eat. I'm doing my best to spoil her because this is her first and only full-term pregnancy she'll be able to experience. I bulk bought some marzipan candies for her and placed them in her cubby in the pantry, where she keeps her maternal vitamins, anti-nausea pills, and snacks. My wife's sister came to visit with her daughter for 2 weeks this Sunday, and we welcomed them to the pantry but asked that they not touch anything in the cubbies because those are especially for us. I went out to run errands the other day and came home to my wife on the couch holding her stomach and crying. I assumed the worst and asked what was wrong, and she told me that niece had eaten up all her marzipan and there was no ground beef and it's all she wanted and everything else smells disgusting. I asked my sister-in-law about it and she said it was just candy and my wife shouldn't be eating so much sugar during her pregnancy anyways, and that she can't expect a kid not to want candy. I asked her to replace it and she said no, and that I could buy it since it was so precious. I told her to leave the next morning and she groaned and grunted about how bad I'm treating her family around the house till she left. My wife's family is calling me an A for kicking them out over something so silly and that I could have bought myself. It all feels so silly, but I'm beginning to doubt myself here. Extra info. My wife does have a balanced pregnancy diet approved by her OBGYN. We try to adhere to consisting of oatmeal, fruit, rice and beans, and chicken, baked or grilled, vegetables, mineral water, and vitamins. The cravings are not all she eats. It's just what she eats when she's craving it. Please have more faith in me as a husband that I won't gorge my wife on sweets while she's in a high-risk pregnancy. Not the a-hole. You gave a clear boundary, they crossed it. Your wife has specific cravings. Your doctors would be the ones to give you the food advice and whether it's too much, etc., not the family. After the trauma your wife has been through, these people seem to have no empathy for her. I would be asking your wife's family, why do you hate my wife? Why is a sister-in-law kid more important than my wife? Do you ever want to meet our child? And then have your wife block everybody who hasn't been 100% supportive so you can still record their terrible takes that make it clear in writing that they don't deserve a place in your wife. Yes, this is a nuclear option, so only do this if you and your wife agree about it. But sister-in-law deliberately sabotaged you guys with her actions and her words. Unless she gives an actual apology, that should include marzipan candies that she doesn't steal again. She is banned from the house, as is anyone who supports her. Hell, she might even be jealous if she has been the only daughter with a child and wants to add stress to your wife in hopes to keep that status quo. I don't know your situation, but I would not let this go, and be clear with the family that you and your wife will not tolerate bad behavior. Not the a-hole. This is, as you've noted, a high risk, high stress pregnancy. This may seem like a small thing, but the distress your wife was in is very real and isn't negligible. Your sister-in-law and niece couldn't manage to follow very basic rules even a single day. This was arguably small, but it demonstrated utter disregard for how delicate this situation and your wife's condition is. Better they leave now before they're given a chance to do more things to elevate your wife's stress levels and discomfort. This would be reserved if they offered to replace the snacks, but what a crappy response from them. And how disrespectful to your wife. Totally in the right for kicking them out for not at least taking responsibility for eating your wife's snacks. As someone whose wife also had crazy cravings during her pregnancy, those foods are sacred. You don't let people even look at them. Apparently, your family's stance is, hey, so someone stole the candy that your fragile wife craves during these very sensitive pregnancy. So just go out and buy more. What jerks? You specifically told your sister-in-law to not touch anything in the cubbies, yet her daughter ate all of the candy. Your sister-in-law took no responsibility for her daughter's actions. She was a terrible house guest. Now she's bad-mouthing you to the rest of your wife's family. Wow, he's a real winner. You seem like a great husband who's trying his best to take care of his wife. Good for you. You were very specific that they could have anything except what was in that cubby. The sister and her child showed a tremendous amount of disrespect by eating it, being verbally rude to you and refusing to buy more. Not only did you do the correct thing in telling them to leave, I'd not let them stay ever again. If they want to visit, they can come stay in a hotel and you can meet them anywhere except in your home. Good on you for standing up for your wife. Her family should be more understanding of how high risk she is. While I've never been pregnant, I know many people who have, and those cravings can be unbearable. Also, commenting on what your wife is eating while she's growing a whole human, unacceptable. Kids can be kids. It'd be one thing if your niece got into the snacks when nobody was looking and your sister-in-law apologized, then promised to replace it. I would be very careful with having her around in the future. If she can't listen to a basic request like, don't eat this specific thing, I wouldn't trust her with some of the bigger things. Next story. Will I be the a-hole if I make my bro sis-in-law lose their free childcare? My 34, wife 31, and I haven't spoken to her brother Todd and his wife Cindy, fake names, for a little over a year now. There are many good reasons for this, which make for a different story on a different day, but suffice it to say that we've really just tried to stay away from their business so long as they stay away from ours. Todd and Cindy married young and had a daughter very early in their marriage. As one might guess, they don't make a ton of money and both work, so they recruited my wife's mom to watch their daughter for free during working hours several days per week. This has been the situation for about the past 2 years. My wife and I have stayed out of it since it's Todd's and Cindy's baby and since my mother-in-law agreed to it, plus it seemed to work out okay for everyone for a while. So we didn't have any major reasons for concern. However, lately, my wife's mom has taken on 2 part-time jobs, which she works during graveyard shifts or on the day she's not nannying. It's becoming more and more evident as time goes by that between the jobs and the free rendered childcare, my mother-in-law's physical and mental health is wearing down. From what my wife and I have heard, this has been brought up very gently to Todd and Cindy once or twice, but they seem to be more concerned about losing their free built-in daycare that mother-in-law's well-being. This has made me irked, but my wife and I still have held our tongues, mainly because what's happening now is largely a result of my mother-in-law's choices. Today changed everything. We just found out through the grapevine that Todd and Cindy are expecting a planned second child. We also found out that mother-in-law was unaware of these intentions and was just as surprised as the news as we were. Frankly, I'm livid. It would be one thing if they were in a place financially and independently to have this child, but I know for a fact that they fully expect my mother-in-law to tack a new infant onto her already overflowing plate of stress and responsibilities. I'm already concerned about mother-in-law's health, but this new baby is going to kill her. Since my mother-in-law is the type of person who struggles to set boundaries for herself and say no, and since Todd and Cindy have a proclivity for manipulation and playing the victim card, I'm sensing a slow motion train wreck from a mile away. Will I be the a-hole if I, along with my wife, start speaking out to the rest of the family and strongly campaigning for my mother-in-law to quit the free nannying? It might cause some serious financial problems for Todd and Cindy, but they're grown-ass adults and something's gotta give in mother-in-law's life. Not the a-hole, but you should be there with your mother-in-law and help support her. She needs to draw this boundary herself because you and your spouse will not be available at every hour, and the other couple will undoubtedly try to ask for your mother-in-law's help. You won't resolve anything by doing this for your mother-in-law. She needs to do this directly. Otherwise, it's only a temporary band-aid and she will go right back to helping as soon as you and your spouse are not there to lend support. The problem with getting involved with other people's business is that it's always messy. Mother-in-law is nannying of her own volition. She has a voice and can say no. Yes, it's probably true that she's being taken advantage of and that your in-laws are taking advantage, but if you make a big stink about it to other family members without offering a workable solution for all parties, you may just end up with burned bridges with both your in-laws and your wife's mom and end up looking like the a-hole. Maybe get your mother-in-law alone. Ask her to open up about her concerns as a first step. Find out what she really wants and needs, and then offer to be available to her to help make that happen. Not the a-hole. We had an almost exact situation happen in my family, and my mom still hasn't recovered from it to this day. Her mental and physical health took a huge dive. We all saw it happening and tried to gently intervene, but that made no difference. I would go to your mother-in-law and explain your concerns and tell her she's cutting years off her life, and no matter when she stops babysitting, they will be mad. If she expresses not wanting to do it anymore, help her. Have her call them while you're there for the extra support. Have her tell them that she can no longer watch their child and that they have up to 30 days to find someone else. Prepare her that they'll guilt her. Prepare her that they might offer some amount of money that they'll never actually pay. But make it clear to her that everyone can see how she's suffering, including them, but they don't care and nothing will change. If she gets to a point where she can't take it, take the phone from her and lay it all out to them. Make it clear to them that their free babysitting is done and that mother-in-law is moving her jobs to work them during the day and she will no longer be available, so they better not even ask. Not the a-hole, but you need to discuss it with your mother-in-law first before you bring other people into the mix. To be frank, it's not your business, and that's how extended family will take it. Has your wife talked to her mom and asked her directly how she feels about this? If your brother-in-law and sister-in-law catch wind of this, it will turn into something bigger with your poor mother-in-law stuck in the middle. It doesn't need to be a big family fight, and I have a feeling that's exactly what it will turn into if you mention it to extended family. You and your wife sit down with your mother-in-law and tell her you're both concerned. That's step one. Mother-in-law might get defensive because that is her grandchild, but she needs to come first. At the very least, mother-in-law needs to start charging to babysit. She can't afford not to. I hope for mother-in-law's sake, one of those two decide to be a stay-at-home parent.